Hi everybody, I'm Greg Fishel. Welcome to bonus weather video number 2 as we get back on track. Number 2 is supposed to occur on Wednesday, and it's still Wednesday, so it all works out. But I thought you might be interested to take a look at some recent trends in tropical activity. And there will be people out there that will try to tell you that there is an increase and it's all due to man-made climate change. Well, I'm of the opinion that that is an easy answer. And easy answers usually don't hold up. I think some of it is, okay, but not all of it. And that's what I want to delve into today and try to approach this objectively and responsibly, at least to the degree possible. So let me put myself down here in the corner. And I went back and took a look at the number of named tropical cyclones, and that means that the sustained winds have to be 39 miles per hour or higher to be named. And the trend line over the last 35 years from 1990 through 2024 is definitely up. And you can see that there's a lot of variation from one season to the next. We all know that. But when you look at the overall trend line, the number of named storms has gone from an average of about 10 up to about 18, maybe 19 over the past 35 years. Now, I want you to pay attention to that number there. For those of you who remember back to your math days when you would graph a function and there was a formula called y equals mx plus b, okay? Well, y was the y value, the value of this variable here along the y-axis. And then the mx, the m, was the slope. It told you how quickly y was changing with respect to x. And in this case, x is time, going from 1990 to 2024. So the value of that is not as important. I just want you to be able to compare it to some other trends that I'm about to show you now. So 0.2605, remember that number. Now we go to the trends in the number of hurricanes from 1990 to 2024. And I kept the y-axis the same. Now obviously there aren't going to be as many hurricanes as named storms, okay? But I wanted you to be able to graphically see the slope of this line, okay? Because if the y-axis changes, then that distorts the slope, and I didn't want to do that. So trends in the number of hurricanes is definitely up as well. It goes from maybe 6 to about 8 or 9. But instead of that number, let me go back here. Instead of it being 0.2605, now the slope is 0.0731. So the trend in the increase in hurricanes over that 35-year period is not nearly as big as the trend in the number of named storms. Now, with increases in satellite technology and our ability to be able to see things way out in the Atlantic that we didn't used to be able to diagnose, that's probably at least part of the reason why the number of named storms has gone up so much. But in terms of the number of hurricanes, that increase has been much slower. And if we take a look at the number of major hurricanes, that trend is slightly smaller than the hurricane one. It's 0.05, okay? So as we go stronger and stronger tropical cyclones, the rate of increase in the number goes down. Now, one other thing I thought would be interesting is to take a look at how the percentage of major hurricanes to the total number of hurricanes in a given season, how that is changing, okay? And I found that interesting in that it's gone from about 35% back in 1990, or an average of that, up to almost 50% in 2024. Now again, tons and tons of variance from one year to the next. In fact, there's 2 years there where there were no major hurricanes at all. But nonetheless, the trend line is up, and it appears that the hurricanes that do form, that a greater percentage of them are becoming major hurricanes. And there is also very solid evidence to support the idea that we are seeing more rapidly intensifying hurricanes. And that is defined as a wind speed increase of 30 knots or higher in a 24-hour period. And the thing that's scary about that is that if this rapid intensification occurs within a couple of hundred miles of a coastline, then all of a sudden somebody could be thinking, oh, it's only going to be a Cat 1, and now it looks like a Cat 3 or a Cat 4, and you don't have time to adjust to that sudden increase in intensity. So that is something that is being researched quite a bit, very aggressively, to see what is causing that. Is it climate change? Is it a cycle? Are the sea surface temperatures just warmer overall? All that stuff is being looked at very, very intensely. Okay, now the slope on that is the highest of the four that I've shown you. Okay, so that is interesting that the percentage of major hurricanes to overall hurricanes is increasing. All right, now there's something called the Atlantic multi-decadal oscillation. This is a totally natural cycle, okay? And it has to do with water temperatures in the North Atlantic. And when those water temperatures are above normal, then hurricane activity in the Atlantic basin tends to be higher. And when it's colder than normal, it tends to be lower, okay? So this is a graph going all the way back to the late 1800s up until about 2012, maybe something like that. Well, I took a look at each decade, and the one with the lowest number, or I'm sorry, the highest number of hurricanes was the period from 1940 to 1950. Well, son of a gun, if that doesn't correspond with the warm phase of the Atlantic multi-decadal oscillation. The second highest number occurred from 2000 to 2010. Also correlating very, very well with the multi-decadal oscillation. And the lowest number of hurricanes for a decade was 1970 to 1980. Also correlates with the negative phase of the Atlantic multi-decadal oscillation. So there are natural cycles that go on in the atmosphere and also the ocean that are going to have an effect on the number of tropical cyclones independent of anything that man is doing. Now, man can supplement that effect, okay, but it's unfair to say that, or just to assume that man has all that effect, okay? That just isn't a responsible way to look at this at all. So now I'm going to get into some commentary, okay? And I'll probably make some of you mad with some of this stuff, but you know, I'm a great believer in being honest, and so here we go. So correlation does not always equal causation, okay? Some of the recent increase in hurricane activity since 1990 may be due to climate change, and probably is, but not all. Now I'm going to supplement this first comment with something here, is that many of you know that for a significant period of time early in my career, I was a climate change skeptic. And what turned me around on that was not some new piece of data that all of a sudden made me, set the alarms off, but it was a realization, and this is embarrassing for me to admit, but it's true. I realized that I was allowing my political ideology to dictate my opinion about a science issue. You can't do that. Ideologies and science do not mix. Ideologies are based on feelings, and science is based on facts, okay? So climate change caused by human activity is a real phenomenon. It's been known about since the late 1800s. People worked it out, famous scientists worked it out with pencil and paper, no computer models, back in the late 1800s. And we know what gases make up our atmosphere. We know what their radiative properties are. We know how they behave. Anybody that tells you that climate change is a hoax is participating in an exercise of willful ignorance. Now, we are all ignorant of some things. Ignorance does not equal stupidity, okay? Ignorance just means you don't know about something. But if you have facts available to you and you choose to ignore them for ideological purposes, that is a participation in willful ignorance. And that, to be honest with you, I don't have a lot of tolerance for. All right, number two, easy answers take away credibility from solid science, okay? And as I move on here, the general public cannot access the scientific community very easily, okay? So the best way that they can do that would be through responsible journalism, because responsible journalism could easily be the liaison from the scientific community to the general public. But when journalism becomes biased, that liaison relationship completely falls apart, okay? Now, to be clear here, I think this is more of a problem with national-based media organizations on both sides of the aisle, okay? I don't see it as much in the local media, although there is some, okay? And I'll give you an example of because a lot of the counter arguments to climate change is, oh, they were predicting an ice age back in the 1970s. That was not a majority opinion among scientists. That was a minority opinion that the media got a hold of, and because we had such a brutal winter in 76, 77, they decided to blow it up, okay? Whose fault is that? It's not the scientific community's fault, because that was not the majority opinion. It is the fault of irresponsible journalism trying to blow something up that doesn't exist, okay? So that argument, if that's meant something to you over the years, you need to deep six that, okay? Because that's not even close to being real. All right, so my advice, for what it's worth, do not rely on clearly biased news organizations. And by the way, they exist on both sides of the aisle, okay? One side is not goody-goody and the other side is not evil-evil. They're both doing this, okay? So you need to be aware of that. And I would recommend that you do your own research to the extent possible. Not all of you are scientists, okay? So it's going to be a little bit more difficult for you to engage in this. But maybe get to know some scientists, okay? I remember we interviewed, when we did our climate change special several years ago, we interviewed a divinity professor at Duke. And we were talking about the fact that some Christians have real problems with science. Some of the conclusions that science comes to is difficult for them to accept based on their faith. But what he recommended was that those Christians that had a problem with science, go talk to the scientists. Don't, it's like, don't sit on the sidelines and criticize everything they're doing. You may find out that a lot of these scientists are also Christians, and they're doing their best to adhere to the scientific method and to be objective and to be fair, but you don't know that unless you communicate with them, okay? And I think this is the problem today. I mean, I see families breaking up over political differences. There was a day when I was alive, it wasn't that long ago, that we could have civil conversations with people, even though we had differing views. And by listening to people with differing views, we gain different perspectives on an issue, even if we didn't change our minds. So all of that is still possible. It's just that we, the members of the general public, need to make a conscious decision to do that and not to blindly follow somebody who is clearly giving out biased information for whatever purpose they choose. So anyways, I'll stop there, but I'm very passionate about this kind of stuff. I sort of feel like, I remember, what was it, a couple of years ago, I think there was a PGA golf tournament where a bunch of climate change activists stormed the 18th green and laid down on the green. That's not helpful. I mean, you may think, if you're a member of that group, you may think you're being helpful. You're not. You're giving good science a bad name, and God knows we don't need that. So, all right. That is bonus weather video number 2 for this week. I hope you found that at least intriguing, if not mad. And the next bonus video will be on Friday. That'll be number 3 for the week. And that's it for now. So you all have a great rest of your Wednesday evening, or Thursday if you don't see it till tomorrow, and we'll talk to you soon. See you later, everybody.